Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Been trying to train myself to look at the camera a little more. Yeah, I'm still not doing it very well, but hey, I'm trying. I'm trying. It's not easy. All right, guys. Pants. To ashes, releasing before World War III. I'm Rodney Dangerfield. I'll be your narrator. Let's roll the R thing. Yeah, so just want to talk about the thing that I think potentially could be the biggest problem for Ashes of Creation, and it's just the fact that I think it's not really designed from the ground up to be all that casual friendly. And in the modern day and age, I think there's more casual players probably than ever in MMOs, just because of the age of the average MMO player is so high now that we have jobs, we have all sorts of different commitments, we have family, we have kids. It's not as easy as when we were all in our early 20s to just be super hardcore. Now, I'm going to be as hardcore as I possibly can be, but I probably will not be as hardcore as I was in my early 20s because it's just mathematically impossible to be that hardcore. But I'll be pretty hardcore in this game. I definitely plan to be. Not everybody can be in, and most people are not hardcore players. The majority are not hardcore players. To have a healthy MMO, especially in a genre that to me is in many ways has less players available than ever, you have to be able to draw in the casuals. Now, the other thing they could do is draw in the youth, which have never played an MMO. There's a lot of people out there that have never played an MMO. And maybe they could draw them in. The youth can be a lot more hardcore just because they have the time to do that. So maybe that's an option too that we could have, and I hope they're able to pull that off maybe somehow. Basically, what they're saying about what their solution is for casual, at least some of the things they've talked about for casuals, is casuals can do like things like caravans and sieges, where those don't take a lot of time investment. But the problem is if you're undergeared and under-leveled, and there's no level scaling, which we'll get into, it could be limited there. Now, a siege weapon, if you have defense, yeah, you might be fine. If a level 50 comes up to you that's fully geared in legendaries, so they have a 50% boost to their stats, which, mind you, there's not going to be very many people that well geared in Ashes of Creation, especially early on. But the boost to your stats at level 50 from full geared legendaries is going to be 40 to 50%. So that, even though the time to kill is around 30 to 40 seconds, something like that, or maybe it's 20 to 30. When the level discrepancy of like a 50 very well geared player versus a 20, level 20, in level 20 gear, which most of the time when you're leveling, your gear is not maxed out for your level range, that could be a one-shot scenario, and that's not fun. The other thing about, well, you could go into siege and run siege weapons, but that gets really boring really fast. I don't know if you've ever ran siege weapons in MMOs, but typically it's not that exciting. You click one button and you have a long cooldown while the treb reloads, and then you click it again. And of course there could be some first-person aiming and things like that, which makes the skill cap a little higher, but it's not necessarily the funnest thing in the world. Caravan's the same. It's the same thing. If you're massively under-geared and under-leveled, it's as long as you don't run into higher-level players, it could be very fun. But the second you run into higher-level players, that's not very fun. If you're a casual and you've just started a caravan with at that point you don't have a lot of stuff. So if you're running a caravan, maybe you're running it for somebody else, but who is going to let low levels, like a high level player is going to say, hey, you level 20s, go run this caravan for us. I don't think too many are going to do that. Or the low level is going to run the caravan with their own stuff, which could be like all their stuff. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I don't know if that's a great thing. And then basically they're saying node progression is a thing. And they talk about, yes, there's a lot more casuals than there are hardcore. So they're aware of the issue, and so hopefully they come up with solutions. But some of the design choices, I think, just in general, just some of this stuff's going to be difficult to work around. But I trust that they'll come up with some solutions for some of these things. I really do. I think they're a good team, and I'm positive on what they have come up with so far. But it is my biggest concern is that it'll just completely be unfriendly to casuals, and that will cause massive problems with population. And a game like this, if you have massive population drop 2 or 3 months in, could be devastating because it's very difficult to merge servers with the way they're designing the nodes and things. So they need to get this right, because you could see one of the bigger flops in MMO history if they completely fail on getting casuals into the game. And here's another thing, not necessarily the most casual friendly. 45 days of playing, 46 hours to get to max level. However, they do say that max level is not necessarily in game, or in game is not the only game, and leveling is part of the process. Every MMO says this. And maybe they'll be one of the ones that actually get this right. And based on what I've read and watched and learned about this game, which for the last year or so, I've learned as much as I possibly can. I'm not saying I know everything, because I certainly do not. But I think, yes, there's going to be tons of things to do while you're leveling that are going to be very enjoyable. And it's not just going to be a game about rushing to in-game. And that's the game. That's the game. I don't think this game is that. Yeah, not typical in-game. Nodes is a big part of the game, and you can do that starting at level 1. That helps. Level scaling. Yeah, I've talked about this, but there's no level scaling. So the caravans, the idea that low levels can just run caravans, if they were scaled up to make them less vulnerable, then that would make more sense. That could be good casual content. I don't know if it's the most casual friendly thing. Progression. And in here they talk about the same idea, basically. Progression path in a society or religion is more conducive to the time that we have to play. So basically a casual player might be able to progress in a society or religion, and get pretty far in it, versus rating and level progression, like getting max level and rating and things like that, are going to be less available to casuals. That's just the way the game is built. So I guess it depends how interesting and how useful these things are. I mean, in most MMOs, stuff like this is not that exciting. So we'll see what they come up with on that. So maybe that could be, if that's really good content, then I suppose then we could see casuals have a good home. This is one of the biggest things, and this is one thing. Of all the things in Ashes of Creation, I like most of the design choices, but I think they're going way overboard on what they want for penalties for death. For a non-combatant, non-flagged player, this is your normal penalty. So, experience debt, skill and stat dampening, lower health and mana, lower gear proficiency, reduced drop rates from monsters, and durability loss. Pretty aggressive death penalty for a non-combatant. I think some of this should be changed. I don't like that. And it's definitely not casual friendly. I think some casuals are going to die and quit the game pretty quickly after the first death. I mean, I won't. I mean, it is a problem. I think it is too aggressive of a death penalty. Game difficulty. It's going to be a difficult game. It really is. I mean, when you look at that death penalty, you can see right there that the difficulty that they're going for. Someone who logs in won't have fun, will be able to have fun is what they're saying. And again, okay, so you're going to run a caravan and things like that. Okay. Well, how many times can you run a caravan before that gets boring? That's the other thing. And even if you can successfully run them without getting ganked constantly, which is very possible because the map is gigantic. So it's very possible you can run caravans and not run into people. But that's also boring. But, I guess you could run into other low levels, and that would be very exciting. But how often is like a group of level 20s going to run into another group of level 20s like 3 months after the game launches, running caravans? Probably not very often. Per character progression, which maybe not the most casual friendly, but I'm okay with it. I like that. I don't like progression that spans across all your characters. Fast travel, this is the other thing. The map is actually... is pretty large for an MMO map, and we're going to get into a little bit of comparison with World of Warcraft's map size to prove that point out. Limited fast travel mounts are your fast travel. I really think that you should be able to get a mount pretty quickly, and the starter mount or beginning mounts should be pretty decent to get around. There's nothing less enjoyable than just having to run constantly in an MMO and not actually playing the MMO, but running instead. And that was one of New World's biggest problems. And New World's tiny compared to Ashes. So that's a problem, potentially. And I like it. And I do like that the map is huge and it takes a while to get around. And that's one of the appeals, the biggest appeals to somebody like me for Ashes of Creation, that you could have stuff 20 kilometers away that is very valuable that you need to travel via caravans to your Metropolis node to make certain crafting items. And that's pretty cool. I like that. I like that you're forced to move things around and travel in the world. And there's reasons to be out in the world and traveling. I think that's very, very cool. If it's such a hindrance to play the game, where if you're spending 60-70% of your time just running around, that could be too much. And it's possible with how big the world is that you could be doing a tremendous amount of running, and that's not necessarily casual friendly. If you have an hour to play and you spend 40 minutes running, that wouldn't be casual friendly. The world size is massive. 480 kilometers squared is the approximate launch size. In comparison, you look at World of Warcraft pre-Burning Crusade was 207 kilometers. And somewhere in here they talk about how fast you can get through. Okay, mounted player can traverse the entire map in a matter of hours. So if you just auto run for hours on a mount, you'll get across it. It's a big map. And that potentially, although that gives you those really interesting dynamics of having to transport things around the world, it also is not necessarily casual friendly, especially when there's minimal fast travel. It's my biggest concern for Ashes, but I still love this game, and I think it's going to be a great game. And I think for hardcore players, it's going to be amazing. And I think they need to have some casuals. You don't need to convince every single casual, every single WoW and FFXIV player. Certainly you won't get a lot of those players because they're so convinced that an MMO needs to be a certain way, right? And this one's very different from those. We don't need to get a lot of those, but certainly, and I certainly think you'll get the EVE players, you'll get the Albion Online players, you'll get a lot of those players. But this game though is so complex, it's way more complex and way more expensive to make than EVE Online or Albion. And because Albion's isometric and those are so much cheaper to make, and it's cartoony graphics. And that's the other thing I haven't talked about that I was going to mention. This has a realistic graphics style, which is great. The visuals are going to be amazing, but the system requirements are going to be higher than they will be on an Albion Online or a World of Warcraft or Riot's MMO, which is very likely going cartoony graphics. I've been doing research on Riot's MMO, and there's more information out there than people think on that MMO. And I'm actually planning to do a pretty large video on everything I've compiled. I've compiled a huge document, all kinds of information. It's going to be a big video. But that game is really, really going after casuals. They really are planning to be a heavy casual friendly game. You know, I think you can have casuals and have hardcore elements as well. So I think, you know, most casuals are probably going to go to Riot's MMO and they may not be interested in Ashes once Riot's MMO comes out, unless Intrepid comes up with answers for some of these things. Intrepid's MMO is more expensive to make and more expensive to maintain than Albion Online, so they need a certain amount of revenue to survive. So, and this is why we can't have all casuals not playing Ashes of Creation. So it's very, very important. Okay, guys, I think that's it. Put your pants back on. I'm too lazy to even put mine back on. I'm kind of tired today, so they're just staying off, but you should probably put yours back on. I'm Ben Stein, and to go out today, we're going to listen to some Stand By Me, Mr. Benny King. You guys may have heard of this before. When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry. I won't cry. No, no, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me.